Senate Majority Leader Tom Bakk joins me now to talk about the first 6 bills that have been introduced. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I wouldn't describe it as the Senate's priorities for the session, but I would describe it as things that we think are important, that we want to get into the conversation as we deal with the governor and the Republican House going forward.
So what made you decide to move forward with these first 6 bills as opposed to the top priorities?
Well, we don't know what the budget, we want to be thoughtful, I guess, about what the governor proposes. His budget will come forward in late January. We don't want to identify things and kind of get ourselves pigeonholed in that, well, but you said your priority was this. When we see the governor's budget and start to review that, he might have some better ideas than we're initially laying out today, and we just want to be able to respond to some changing circumstances. The House Republicans might have some ideas that the Senate has a lot of interest in working with them on. So we're just trying to lay out some things that we think we want to get on the table, and some of it I expect there's going to be some significant bipartisan support for.
You did say repeatedly that you consider these financially scalable. If you find that any of these proposals are just really expensive, will you support scaling back on these, or would you support new revenue to pay for some of these ideas?
No, unless something really goes south with the February budget forecast and somehow revenue falls off, I expect that the Senate can put our 2-year budget together without any new general fund tax revenue.
Okay, you just mentioned the bipartisan support. Is this based off of conversations with GOP members, or is this speculation just knowing the different areas that would be impacted?
Well, I think it is just, coming off of an election year, we heard a lot, even though the Senate wasn't on the ballot, we actually benefited by kind of looking at the conversation that was going on the campaign trail without having to worry about garnering up votes. So I think what we learned over the course of the election year was a pretty objective approach, a very strong listening time for the Senate to hear what the House members were hearing from their constituency, their potential voters. And I do think that these priorities reflect the concerns that we were able to hear during the election cycle.
Mr. Majority Leader, was there any intention to introduce bills that do have bipartisan support? Was this intentionally done to set a tone of cooperation?
Well, I think they reflect Minnesota's priorities, and I think most Minnesotans don't have a strong partisan bent. They just want to see their government function and address the priorities that they feel are important to them and to their communities, and I think this reflects the needs of Minnesotans.
Last question for you. Which area do you see, not necessarily these 6 bills, but just in general, where do you see the most controversy at this point coming into session?
Well, I think if we get away from these 6 bills and just look at look at your crystal ball of the session, based on what I'm hearing early on, the House Republicans are going to want to spend general fund money on transportation. That's going to be a tough lift in the Senate. We think there are a lot of competing priorities, things like nursing home funding, early childhood funding, funding for workforce development, funding for the courts to make sure that people that are in our judicial system are able to timely get their cases to trial. You often hear people say, justice delayed is justice denied. But there are a lot of spending priorities that as we start to put a budget together, we're going to learn more about, and we think we need the general fund money needs to be reserved for what have been traditionally general fund spending priorities.
Okay, Senate Majority Leader Tom Bakk, thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll catch up with you later in session.
Thank you.